Sports have gone digital. Esports is taking over arenas and athletes are making millions. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the conversation where you can learn how to get in the action. Who here loves sports? Me too, me too. Love the NBA. Yay. Okay, so participating in this afternoon's TCX Tech Talk to discuss the topic eSports Are You game is Delane Parnell, founder and CEO of PlayVA, a venture-backed startup building the infrastructure for high school sports. So we're super excited about that. Delane will be interviewed by Cameron Colvin, former star football player for the San Francisco 49ers. Cameron is an author, philanthropist, and now chairman of Rise Above Enterprises Development, a multi-million-dollar international real estate development, investment firm, and creative solutions company. So please welcome out Delane and Cameron.
Good afternoon. Oh, I can't hear you. Y'all still full from lunch, huh? Well, I hope you guys are having a great time. I'm Cameron Colvin. I'll be the moderator here with my brother Darnell here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as a former professional athlete, people always talk about, what do you think about esports? They're calling guys who are playing video games, they're calling them, cream of the crop athletes. If you put up that Venn diagram, these guys are athletes. They're spending hours and hours, preparing to go out and perform. They're spending numerous days with coaches, right? Yeah. They have actual coaches who come in and teach these young men and women how to compete. So I'm here to talk to the man himself about what esports is. So talk to me. Tell me what's esports? When and why? Why'd you get into esports?
Yeah, so at a broad level, how many people actually, by show of hands, know anything about esports? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so at the highest level, esports is a term best used to describe competitive video gaming. So people playing video games competitively, bound by competitive rule set and generally in the league, no different than the NBA or the NFL. In fact, some of the same people who own NBA or NFL teams also own esports franchises, like the Joe Lacob and the Golden State Warriors, or Dan Gilbert who owns the Cavaliers, the New York Yankees, Robert Kraft, so on and so forth. And so for me in particular, what our company does in esports, our company is called Play Versus. We're introducing esports into high schools. So we went out and partnered with a group that, since for 100 years, has governed all high school sports, and we go out and partner with game publishers, and we make those video games actual sanctioned sports. So kids can play League of Legends, for example, for a state championship in letter, like varsity letter, no different than basketball or football. Started the company last year. We raised $15.5 million earlier this year, and I'm happy to be here.
I'm gonna back it up a little bit. Start and tell us about your journey, growing up in Detroit.
Yeah.
What influenced you, growing up in Detroit to attack the market of high school sports, of esports?
Yeah. So I'm originally from Detroit. I live in LA now. And yeah, go Detroit for the one person who clapped. So originally from Detroit, I grew up in the Jeffers Projects in Detroit, raised by a single mother. She's amazing. And she actually, inspired me and my brother to get into business pretty early. And initially it was just like, here's a way to stay out of the neighborhood until she's home from work. And for me, it sort of turned into passion. And so I worked at a cell phone store. Eventually that led to me owning cell phone stores when I was 16, Metro PCS stores. Started a car rental. We have 16 locations in Michigan. And then I went to go work in venture. So I worked at an early stage venture fund called Inkwell with a bunch of automotive billionaires. Then sort of bounced around in different startups and decided last year to move from Detroit to LA to build a new company, and that company is Play Versus.
Okay, so backstage, we're sitting down, we're hanging out, and people are just asking you questions like, what is it? How do you monetize it? How do you make money from it? Because most people are like, well, how in the world do you make money from playing video games?
Yeah.
So tell us, how do you monetize an esports company?
Yeah. Well, obviously, no different than any company in any other industry. there's different monetization strategies depending on the business. In our case, we make money by charging a participation fee. So for those who are familiar with high school sports, parents are spending on average $400 per kid per sport per year for their kid to actually just play a sport, not including equipment and travel, so on and so forth. And we charge $64 per season. So if a kid wants to play eSports on behalf of their school, they pay us $64, or the school pays us $64 per kid. And we do 3 seasons every year, so every season is a 4-month season. And it's actually the first time in 100 years of our country that a third party has been able to own and operate exclusively a high school sport. And so yeah, there's a bunch of other ways to make money, but participation fees for us.
So currently, there are 300 million people worldwide who tune in to esports. So it's beating out any NBA finals, any Major League Baseball, World Series, anything of that nature. And by 2020, we're looking at about 500 million people. You're talking 500 million people around the world are going to be watching sports, that nobody is technically sweating. So, so think of that. So going into esports as a young black man, with your background in venture capital, what kind of advice would you give, to other entrepreneurs who are thinking about going out into the field of esports and how to structure that business?
Yeah, well, that's very general. I think in esports in particular, as an industry, publishers have a lot of control. So it's a little bit different in the sense of traditional sports, where you can go pick up a ball from Dick's Sporting Goods and then go and operate your own league at a court. In esports, you have to work with game publishers, and game publishers, like Activision Blizzard or Riot Games or EA Sports, because they developed the game and it's their IP, if you want to work with them, then you have to partner with them. And they're very reluctant in some cases to partnership, given that they control so much of the process internally. Rightfully so, they're really good at what they do. But if you want to build a business in this space, then you have to work with them. I think that's the thing that most people don't recognize. You can't build a business in an ecosystem without having a partnership from the people who actually create the games. It's very similar to the music industry. Like Spotify can't put someone's song on their app for distribution if like that music label or the musician themselves haven't approved it.
Definitely. So, as a young man growing up in the Bay Area, I had a best friend who was, shot and killed, the day before we were supposed to go to college. And when I was doing my homework, on your organization, the biggest thing I saw was his organization is keeping, young men and women, off the streets after school. They don't have to be at football practice. They don't have to be playing a certain sport. And I think we get caught up a lot, teaching young kids that, sports and music, are the way to go. You're giving them a different angle. So talk to us about, the kids in your program, the kids that, participate and play versus, in the after-school programs or whatnot.
So we're rolling out esports today, at least in 5 states this month: Kentucky, Georgia, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. So in those 5 states, kids this fall, they'll be able to play on, League of Legends, which is the game that we're rolling out. It's the biggest esport in the world, for a state championship. I think and then next season, which is starts in February, we'll roll out at least 4 more games in maybe 15 to 20 more states. Generally, like sports aren't scalable. So when you think about it, there's 16 million kids in high school in our country. Only 8 million can actually play sports, not because they're not interested, just there are limitations, right? There's freshman JV varsity, boys and girls. There's a certain amount of people who can actually play on a roster of each sport. And so half of the population in high school, they go without being able to do something after school, or be a part of something, develop affinity for their school. And so we're just providing an opportunity for them to do so. Not in the sense that we're a nonprofit, but inherently, there's just benefits to the business that we do. And it'll have some sort of social impact. And beyond that, I think we're most excited about the opportunity to validate people who consider themselves to be gamers and who eventually want to become pro in esports. Because when you think about traditional sports, high school was the best time in the world for athletes. Like they were defined by their high school years. In esports, these are kids who've been, bullied or made fun of. They didn't have friends. They were told that gaming would never get them anywhere. Now, they're playing in front of 60 million people or 90,000 people in an arena, 60 million people online, and they're making millions of dollars every year in salary, even more than most football or basketball players in some cases. And that's despite high school. And so we get a chance to be able to provide an opportunity for them to be validated, to be recognized, and we're thrilled to be able to have that platform.
Within your program, do you guys offer any like financial literacy, for these kids? Because obviously they're getting the opportunity to go to that next level and make that kind of money.
Sure.
Because the biggest thing with professional athletes is not knowing how to handle their money. So you kind of have to take the same approach as a business owner. You want to take the same approach is to building a platform that can teach these kids longevity.
Sure. Look, we take it as our first off, no, to answer your question. We operate a high school sport. It's no different than if one company owned every football field, every equipment, every concession, every ticket sale, all of the streaming rights for football. We do that, but for gaming. And a part of that is to teach these kids how to be athletes and to remove a lot of the just misbehavior and sort of toxic environments that they typically experience playing at home with strangers online. But it's not, it's the coach and the teacher's job to sort of teach those principles, and our job to sort of operate those leagues and create safe environments for kids.
What about your core values of the organization? What are some of those things? Tell us about some of those things.
So we have 4 core values at our company. The first is all in. So if it's worth doing, it's worth winning. The second is teamwork. So this sort of concept of the name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back. The third is impossible is our favorite kind of possible. That's pretty self-explanatory. And the fourth is player experience first. So everything that we do is driven by our players, and we sort of assess over the things that they care about.
Nice. For your structure, so when you started this, what were some of your, limiting beliefs? Obviously entrepreneurs walk into a room sometime and have limiting beliefs. What kind of hurdles did you have to get over personally, to get to that next level? What were some of those things?
Yeah, so certainly I don't really subscribe to self-selecting out. For us, the biggest hurdle was that we went out to own a high school sport, and no one's ever done that before. That's a hurdle in itself. I think, look, when I first started the company, I had 2 principles that I needed to resolve to be able to, I felt like, to get the company off the ground. The first was, and I'd established these prior to even pursuing the company. The first was that we needed to work with game publishers. So these massive multi-billion-dollar companies who generally do everything in-house, we needed to get them to want to partner with us, and ideally for free. And the second was we needed this to be defensible. So it needed to be institutionalized within high school, treated no different than basketball or football. We worked pretty aggressively for 6 or 7 months of the company to resolve those things, and in that span, it was just literally me. I was the only person at our company. We got it done, and then we sort of went off to the races from there.
Talk about that. Talk about building, obviously within sports, building teams. That's everything, right? Building people who are compatible, who can motivate one another. Talk about some of your strategies in terms of what you look for when you're doing hires, or you're looking for partners and things like that, or even when you're looking for the right fit as a venture capitalist. What are you looking for? Yeah,
so it's 2 different sort of personas there. I think as a CEO, when I think about building our team, first off, I think team is the most important aspect of a business. A lot of people obsess over the idea, and the idea has to matter. Is very much so less about the idea, more about the team behind it. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about what sort of structure our company should have, what sort of culture our company should have, and really the people that help us define that. The process in hiring those people and evaluating those people differ depending on what level of experience they're coming in. So when we're hiring executive leadership, so C-level or VP level people, we spend and we, as in me and the other people on our leadership team, we spend 3 or 4 months before we even extend an offer, because those people are ideally at the company for the lifespan of the company. And so so we spent a lot of time just getting to know that person, doing reference checks, and just deep diving into their brain and how they think about things. In most of the other roles, I mean, look, I think there's a level of competence that's like very clear that like, you have to be competent, you have to be independent, especially at a company under 200 employees. Every single person has to carry momentum, like of the entire company, and one person can ruin everything. And so, ultimately, we look for people with deep experience and deep expertise, but also people who we would define as having the stamina to get from like 0 to 1 in whatever role they are. And it's hard, even for companies with money and resources and massive networks. It's very difficult to recruit people. Ultimately, you have to create a culture in a place that people enjoy working at, and sort of leverage that as your engine. People talking about your company, saying like whether it be in the industry, in the market, or even employees that work for you.
Definitely. And fun fact, this man right here was the youngest black venture capitalist at 20 years old in the United States of America. So let's give him a round of applause for that. Right? Yeah, definitely. So soon we're going to open up for some Q&A for you guys. We kind of got done what we were discussing a little earlier, but I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions to field some of your interests and see if my man can give you guys some great advice. So I think we're going to have you guys line up on this side here, on this side, and then in that row right there. So I'm sorry, I'm not a good director at this, but she got the mic right there for you.
Question for, I have a question for the high school kids. Are they required to have a certain GPA or something?
Yeah. So yeah, no different than any other sport. You're required to be eligible to play, and so that varies on a state-by-state level. But there is eligibility requirements. GPA is one of them.
Hi, Marcy Jones with Urban Connoisseurs. She did answer one of my questions about the GPA. What was that minimum GPA? Did you have a minimum?
So it varies on a state-by-state level, but I'd assume that it ranges between 2.0 and 2.5, no different than any other sport.
Okay. And then the other question, I used to coach cross-country runners, long-distance runners, and I know that, sports is not for everybody.
Yep.
Everybody can't run, everybody can't shoot, but do you encourage some activity, just recognizing that our kids, have a high number of obesity, and that I understand that this, sports is not for everybody on the competitive side, but do you encourage them to be active physically in something?
So well, there's a couple things I like to unpack there. One, so while there's not as much physical exertion, there's a lot of mental exertion. I would liken esports to NASCAR in that regard, where NASCAR athletes are generally still in shape because healthy body, healthy mind. And so any sports in high school, no different than any other sports, there will be a practice regimen that includes physical cardio and weightlifting. And that's for the coach or the multiple coaches at the school to sort of mandate and ensure it happens. The other thing, like for the same reasons we love sports, we love esports, right? When you think about the reasons you love sports, I'd say there's probably 4 pillars: the community, the teamwork, the competition, and the storylines. Esports has all of those same elements, and so it's very much so like not many differences, I guess.
How you doing, Cameron and Delaney? I'm the founder of Soletics. We are focused on athletic mindset development. Mm-hmm. So as you were talking about providing that value to students, do you see that as something like the complete development? Is that as something that you can implement or you could offer to your athletes as well?
Development of what in particular?
We'll say for me, our company, we focus on total mindset development. So the tenets are developing mental fortitude, peak fitness, and a strong internal infrastructure. Yeah. So it's like me, I'm a 2-sport professional athlete, software engineer. I spent 17 years at Intel Corporation, written several books. And the reason I say all that is I was able to do all that because of the total approach to life. It was also a mental, physical, and spiritual approach. Sure. So do you, Cameron was asking you, do you offer that as far as the other development piece to your
Yeah.
eSports platform?
Yeah, we're a technology company, right? And so our job is to operate the league and really build out the infrastructure that allows this to just happen. A part of that is motivating the adult or the coach to be able to have not only the knowledge but feel comfortable, being the person that kids depend on in those situations, right? Like no different than any other sport in that regard, right? A football coach is there to not only coach you on the technical component of the game, but also the mental aspect. And so the coach, in this case, for gaming at the high school, will do the exact same thing. And for gamers, I guess that's a new experience, unless you play, at the collegiate or the professional level. But one that's no different than any other sport.
Yeah.
We won't sell that as a service, though. That's just inherent a part of the experience.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Congrats, by the way, on all of your success.
Congrats to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Coach Deuce Larman. I'm also an ex-basketball player that's now a techie too. And I just want to say thank you for bringing this more to light. I'm based out of Miami, Florida, flew in. And you know what? I was at the Hurricanes game. And, oh yeah, go Canes. I said, okay, good. Listen up, man. This is just an exciting platform. I actually want to go back into high school and middle school and sign back up and do what you're doing. And as long as you offer Tecmo Bowl. Okay, I don't know if any gamers here, but I would have got Bo Jackson and I would have been all over this thing if they had this thing back in middle school and elementary school. But anyway, man, I want to know, what are you doing also with our students to help them transition to college? Because maybe the audience don't know, there are a lot of universities that are also offering this as an opportunity to get scholarships, right, for school. So are you also helping our students obtain scholarships? Because we've been running some of the programs that you're talking about right now. We've been doing this in video gamification down in South Florida as well for the last 6 years. We run a program called eSports School.
Yeah.
And so I want to know, are you also helping our students that are participating in the high school level of video gamification also get into college?
Yeah, so there's 200 or so colleges that offer esports scholarships today in the tens of millions for kids to play at the varsity level of whatever game at their college. The NCAA also has a team exploring esports. We're pretty involved with that team, so we spend time talking to them and figuring out how they should deploy esports and when they should deploy esports. And as far as the colleges that currently offer scholarships, they'll be able to come onto our platform and recruit kids. Today, a lot of their scholarships actually go on field because there's no league that operates at the high school level for them to recruit. And so giving them the data and access to be able to actually recruit kids will be a big part of it. And there'll probably be other stuff that we personally do as a company in terms of offering our own scholarships or our rewards or grants and stuff like that. Thanks.
Cameron, what's up, brother?
How you doing?
Delaney, thanks for the coming up here on stage and offering the insight. Two-part question. African American community, two things are pretty foreign: VC and tech.
Yeah.
How would you suggest getting involved in those, or bridging those gaps from the entrepreneur side? From the entrepreneur side, more particular.
What's the second question?
I'll focus on that one.
All right, cool. So look, I think coming to events like this is a part of it, right? Meeting people, talking to people. People come to these events and then they sort of stay with their tribe that they maybe know or they came to the event with. When I first actually, was getting involved in the tech community, I spent a lot of time going to events, but I would actually talk to people, everybody actually, and I built a pretty good network that way, and I'd also have proper follow-up. I think beyond meeting people, the number one sort of aspect of that is follow-up. So you have to reach back out to that person, ideally within the 24, 48-hour span, maybe referencing even things that you've talked about, and that takes some diligence, and you have to be sort of account for all of the conversations that you have. A life hack that I still use today is I just write on the back of a card if I get it, or I'll make a note in a notepad to say this person, a couple lines of what I talked to that person about. I think that's really important. There's obviously really great places. There's other events like this too, Afrotech with Morgan DeBon, who I believe was honored yesterday here. They have an amazing tech conference in San Francisco that happens next month. I know a lot of people who actually get introduced to tech that way. And I mean, even yesterday, I met someone who's like a massive celebrity, and they're like, man, Afrotech was the first entry point to me learning about tech, and where Black people sort of fit in there. And so I think events is a really helpful spot, but also like meet peers, meet people who are doing stuff, be helpful to people, read and listen to the podcast, whatever you prefer, really important. And then try stuff, right? Try it, fail at it, be okay with that, and just sort of have some persistence there. I think that's really important. In terms of the VC part of that, it's like that's just entrepreneurship, I would say. And VC is a little bit depends on what route. So if you want to be a VC, then it's probably important that you understand how to evaluate companies and you understand economics and just like basic mathematics. And some of that you can teach, and other parts of it you can't. Some of it's just instinct and sort of intuition. The evaluation of companies is just understanding numbers and markets and being able to do proper research, and you can learn those things. Being a VC is somewhat of a rewarding job. It's pretty boring. It's actually it's the same thing over and over every day, and the tough part is you have to say no to thousands of people every year. And so if you have empathy for entrepreneurs, I doubt that you could actually be a VC for a long time. But yeah, look, I think if you want to raise money, then you have to build those relationships, and you have to like understand the dynamics of VC. That's a very long conversation. But there's a lot of resources out there, and anyone who has more questions around like raising money and stuff like that, I'll be around for a little bit, and I'm happy to answer.
Thanks for your time, man.
Thank you, man.
Hi, gentlemen. So my name is Joan McNally. I'm the author of this book, The Hero in the Helmet, Colin Kaepernick, based on the protests he led. And I felt responsible to do more for our children educationally. So I put it into a book in the simplest way that we can understand what this is about, right? So my question to you is, so one of my larger ideas, I have a lot of nephews and nieces who love video games and spend hours and hours and hours playing it. So one of my ideas is to actually turn this book into a video game with an educational piece so that it would teach children about, social responsibility and social justice. So my question to you both is what value do you see in putting out video games that are educational and both political for children? And what advice would you have for me in working towards that goal?
Sure. So first off, I think what you've done is pretty dope. I like to check that out if that's
Absolutely.
possible. The sort of in general, I guess I'll talk about like the educational part. Like I think there's obviously like educational benefits and things like life lessons that you learn from being a part of a team and competing in video games and even playing video games general. But like ultimately, like I don't know if kids are like interested in like playing video games where it's like all about learning. Okay. Ultimately, and then the sort of harsh reality I think is becoming a game publisher, developing games, it's very difficult. And so it's not easy, and most game publishers fail. It's a hit or miss business. That's why investors actually shy away from investing in game publishers. We're out of time. I'm happy to talk more about that though offline. Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you.
So let's definitely give this young man a round of applause for his amazing achievements. And thank you all for coming, and you guys could have been anywhere else in the world. You're here with us. Thank you now.
Thank you guys.